tourism recovery from COVID-19 has been slow and uneven. Over the past 12 months, tourist arrivals in the country have reached only about 55 to 60% of 2019 levels. This means the recovery remains very partial, especially when compared to other Southeast Asian destinations where travel is booming. So why is the Philippines, an archipelago known for its beauty, still lagging behind? One major issue is traffic, which many visitors describe as among the worst in Asia. Despite this, some remain optimistic. If other countries can do it, our country can do it as well, say local tourism advocates. Cebu, located in the heart of the Philippine archipelago, is one of the country's most popular tourist destinations. The island is famous for its stunning beaches and rich historical landmarks. A popular souvenir shop sits beside the Mactan Shrine, which commemorates the first Filipino resistance against Spanish colonization. In previous years, particularly from October to December, and again in May, June, and July, Cebu attracted many South Korean tourists. However, this year has been different. From January to June, arrivals from South Korea dropped to about half of last year's figures. Across the Philippines, daily tourist numbers have also declined from roughly 16,000 to 20,000 to around 5,000 to 6,000. This is the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic that South Korean tourism to the Philippines has fallen. Industry experts explain that South Korean travelers are highly price-sensitive, and recent economic challenges and political uncertainty at home have reduced their disposable income. In addition, natural disasters affecting Philippine island destinations have shaken travel confidence. There have also been isolated safety and security concerns that may have influenced perceptions of the country. Overall, South Korean travel to Southeast Asia has declined, but the impact has been particularly severe for the Philippines, since South Korea is its largest tourism market. Last year alone, South Korean visitors contributed approximately $2.3 billion to the Philippine economy. Looking beyond South Korea, the overall picture remains concerning. Compared to its neighbors, the Philippines has experienced the slowest post-pandemic tourism rebound. Between 2015 and 2019, tourist arrivals to the country were growing strongly. Using 2019 as a benchmark, current arrivals are only about 55 to 60% of pre-pandemic levels. In contrast, Thailand has recovered to about 75%, Singapore to 90%, Malaysia to 100%, and Vietnam has even surpassed its 2019 numbers at 120%. Clearly, the Philippines is lagging behind. A major reason for this is the sharp decline in Chinese tourists. Currently, arrivals from China are only about 15% of 2019 levels. This is largely due to ongoing diplomatic tensions between the Philippines and China over territorial disputes in the South China Sea, also known in the Philippines as the West Philippine Sea. As a result, domestic tourism has become the backbone of the country's travel recovery. Even Cambodia, which began developing its tourism sector later than the Philippines, surpassed the country in visitor arrivals last year. This is surprising, especially considering that the Philippines was recently awarded Asia's leading beach destination. The Philippines was named a top destination at the 2024 World Travel Awards. The archipelago has plenty to offer travelers, not just natural destinations or beautiful beaches and dive sites, but also unique and diverse cultural assets. Filipinos' ability to communicate well in English is another major advantage, making it easier for tourists to connect and relate with locals. In addition, the warm, nurturing, and genuinely caring Filipino brand of hospitality is what truly sets the country apart. So, what explains the Philippines' underwhelming tourism figures? Even before the pandemic, the country lagged behind its regional counterparts. It received fewer than 10 million visitors per year on average, about half of Vietnam's total and only a quarter of Thailand's. One major reason for this is cost. On average, a one-week trip to the Philippines costs $100 to $200 more than a similar trip to Vietnam, Indonesia, or Thailand. The Philippines is also more isolated compared to other Southeast Asian destinations. For example, when you land in Thailand, you can easily travel to Cambodia or Vietnam. In contrast, visiting the Philippines is more intentional because travelers must fly directly there, and once in the country, they often need additional flights to move between islands. Tourists spend around $2,000 on average per trip to the Philippines, which typically lasts about 12 days. Outside of flights, meals and hotels can also be expensive, especially on remote islands. This makes the Philippines the country with the second highest tourism spending per visitor in Southeast Asia, after Singapore. In countries like Malaysia and Thailand, many travelers take short, low-cost trips within the region, including backpackers. In the Philippines, tourism is more geared toward longer 2-week holidays, which naturally increases spending. However, this is not necessarily a sign of strength, and it simply means the country is limiting itself to a smaller group of higher-spending tourists. Tourism is extremely important to the Philippines. Nearly 7 million Filipinos directly depend on it for their livelihoods, while more than 16.4 million benefit indirectly. Tourism contributes about 8.9% to the country's GDP and plays a key role in supporting local economies across different destinations. Despite its beauty and culture, many travelers are still hesitant to visit. One major issue is Manila's Ninoy Aquino International Airport, which has often been ranked among the worst airports in the world. In a 2024 study of 61 major airports, NAIA placed last in terms of accessibility, efficiency, and cleanliness. Many travelers report long immigration lines and extremely slow baggage claim. Some have waited nearly 2.5 hours just to retrieve their luggage. While some people argue that Manila Airport is not the worst, most agree that it urgently needs major upgrades to handle the growing number of travelers. Another problem is connectivity. Only 58 airlines offer direct international flights to the Philippines, the lowest among Southeast Asia's major economies. Even popular destinations like Boracay and Siargao often require connecting flights because their airports are small and underdeveloped. Geography also makes travel difficult. The Philippines is an archipelago made up of thousands of islands, making air travel essential. However, many airports are outdated and cannot expand due to natural limitations such as mountains or small land areas. This makes travel time much longer compared to nearby countries. Even after landing, getting around Manila is another challenge. According to the 2024 TomTom Traffic Index, Manila ranks among the top cities with the longest travel times, averaging over 32 minutes to travel just 10 kilometers. Traffic is particularly bad during rush hours from 6 to 8 p.m. Jeepneys, which were originally adapted from American military vehicles after World War II, contribute significantly to congestion. There are nearly 200,000 jeepneys across the country, and drivers often stop anywhere to pick up passengers, further slowing traffic. Since 2017, the government has tried to phase out traditional jeepneys and replace them with electric minibuses, but the transition has been slow. Jeepneys are often decades old, sometimes 20 years or older. They are part of the Public Transportation Modernization Program, which plans to replace traditional jeepneys with more efficient and environmentally friendly vehicles. The program is also looking at designating proper bus stops and mapping routes on mobile apps. For now, jeepneys remain the most common and widely used form of public transport in the Philippines. However, the problem is that they are not very tourist-friendly. There are no clearly marked loading and unloading bays, and for visitors, understanding the system can be challenging. Tourists need to know that payment is usually in cash, and exact change is often required. If you pay with a 1,000 peso bill, drivers most likely will not have change. It can also be confusing to understand where jeepneys are going, because they usually follow a single route and can stop almost anywhere along the road. Even in popular tourist destinations like Cebu, getting around is not easy. Mass transportation is not great here. That is why transport companies and tour agencies help travelers reach their destinations. One tour agency, which opened in 2018, offers trips around the city and the southern part of the island. Most of their clients come from the United States, Australia, and the United Kingdom. Cebu is mostly known for adventure activities like whale shark watching, Moalboal sardine runs, and Kawasan Falls canyoneering. In the city, we also take visitors to historical sites such as Magellan's Cross, Basilica del Santo Niño, Cebu Heritage Monument, and the Yap San Diego Ancestral House. Many top destinations are far from the city, usually 2 to 3 hours away without traffic. With heavy traffic, travel time can reach up to 5 hours, which is often frustrating for tourists. Meanwhile, 27-year-old Mark Joshua Aruga from Batangas began posting travel videos in 2018. I decided to share my content after visiting all 82 provinces. I experienced the beauty of our country firsthand, and I want to inspire others to explore every province. His videos usually include travel tips, recommended places in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, as well as activities to try in each destination. Last year, domestic travel in the Philippines reached a record 134 million trips. Joshua travels across the country every year, but transportation remains his biggest challenge. There are times when I need to take flights or ferries. I once spent almost a full day just to reach Biri Island in northern Samar. I traveled 10 hours by land, then 2 hours by ferry, then more land travel and another ferry. Transportation can still be improved, but I still enjoy my experiences. Infrastructure upgrades are underway. Last year, Ninoy Aquino International Airport, or NAIA, was privatized. A 122 billion peso investment, which is about $2 billion, is expected to modernize the airport and actually double its passenger capacity. Because the Philippines relies heavily on international air travel, the Department of Tourism has worked closely with the Department of Transportation and aviation partners to increase direct flights. As a result, new international routes have been added by 47 airlines. Additionally, 7.7 billion pesos have been allocated to upgrade 15 regional airports this year. A new international airport is also being built north of Manila. Covering 2,500 hectares, it's expected to be one of the largest airports in the world. However, some experts worry that the site sits on unstable land. There are also concerns about delays and corruption in large infrastructure projects. Critics say that poor governance and lack of transparency could affect their completion. Airlines also depend on government support. Some argue that the government should provide tax incentives or subsidies to encourage more flights, but funding remains a challenge. To reduce traffic in Manila, a second metro rail transit line is scheduled to be completed in about 2 years. The 33-kilometer Metro Manila subway is expected to launch in 2029, with a branch line going to NAIA. In Cebu, a bus rapid transit system began test operations last September to help reduce traffic and pollution. The full plan is for a 13-kilometer route, but right now, only Phase 1 is operational, covering about 2 kilometers from the South Cebu bus terminal to Fuente Osmeña. Since only the first phase is complete, the route is still pretty short, and honestly, its full benefits are not yet felt. From northern Cebu to southern Cebu, and now maybe something similar to Oslo, it could become even better for tourists, and much easier to get around Cebu. Phase 1 is already 90% completed, while the full 35-kilometer route is projected to be finished by 2030. However, funding from the World Bank has been withdrawn due to persistent delays. If things are put to proper use, and tourism infrastructure is prioritized based on objective decisions rather than political interests or personal connections to decision-makers, then I believe we would see more deliberate and meaningful development in the tourism sector. Beyond upgrading infrastructure, the government is also focusing on developing sustainable tourism. For instance, one program has awarded over 250 million pesos in grants to 15 local government units for sustainable tourism initiatives. In simple terms, sustainable tourism means making sure that tourism activities do not only generate profit or economic growth, but also bring real benefits to local communities and the environment. In a practical sense, investing in sustainability is also investing in the long-term attractiveness and marketability of a destination, not just its present appeal. In Pamilican Island, south of Bohol, locals once relied on hunting dolphins and whales for their livelihood. This practice was banned in the 2000s to protect marine wildlife. Today, these same animals have become a major tourism attraction, including dolphins, whales, and whale sharks. Tourism has now become the main source of income for around 200 families on the island. However, this progress was heavily affected when the pandemic hit. Like many other parts of the Philippines, tourism in Pamilican Island has struggled to return to pre-COVID levels. As a result, there is a lot riding on new investments aimed at helping the tourism industry recover. The government expects the sector to employ 34 million Filipinos by 2028, which is 5 times more than last year's total. Overall, The goal is to ensure that tourism is not measured by numbers alone, but by the real value it brings to destinations, stakeholders, and communities. The hope is that through collaboration, partnership, and community upliftment, tourism can remain a reliable source of livelihood despite the challenges and natural calamities the country has faced. Despite infrastructure upgrades and slow post-pandemic recovery, a key question remains: how can the Philippines market itself as an attractive tourist destination? A seafood restaurant in Cebu, opened in 1993, serves Filipino dishes such as tinola and kinilaw, and has attracted visitors from Korea, Japan, China, Taiwan, the United States, Russia, Malaysia, and other countries, including halal travelers. However, business has slowed significantly since the pandemic, with fewer group tourists and lower customer turnout compared to previous years. One major factor affecting tourism recovery is the decline in Chinese visitors. Last year, around 300,000 Chinese tourists arrived in the Philippines, which is, far below the Department of Tourism's 2024 target of 2 million. That number would have matched pre-COVID figures. Geopolitical tensions in the South China Sea have made it unlikely that Chinese tourist numbers will rebound anytime soon, even though China has historically been one of the largest sources of tourists in Asia. Previously, Chinese citizens could apply for short-stay electronic visas for travel or work in the Philippines. However, this system was suspended 2 years ago due to issues involving Chinese nationals in offshore gaming operations. The e-visa program only resumed recently. While the Department of Tourism hopes this will increase Chinese arrivals, it is also looking at other markets. Since June, Indian nationals have been allowed visa-free entry into the Philippines, and Air India began direct flights from Delhi to Manila in October. This is seen as a strategic move since India is one of the fastest-growing economies in the world, and, well, many Indian travelers face visa barriers elsewhere. There is also strong potential within Southeast Asia itself. Intra-regional travel accounted for 45% of international arrivals last year, up from 37% in 2019. However, the Philippines ranks 9th out of 10 Southeast Asian countries in attracting regional tourists, with Malaysia leading the list. Competition in Southeast Asia is intense, particularly from Indonesia, which has a growing middle class. Countries like Malaysia, Thailand, and Singapore are also strong players. To compete, the Philippines could focus more on halal-friendly tourism and offer more affordable travel options, as it currently tends to cater more to higher-spending visitors. For now, there is, some skepticism about the speed of the Philippines' tourism recovery. Many analysts do not expect significant growth in the next year due to strained relations with China. Some believe that a political shift in 2028 could change this, but in the short term, improving public perception and marketing will be crucial. This leads back to the controversial ranking that labeled the Philippines as the least safe country for tourists. Although the publisher later admitted the ranking was incorrect, it still highlights a broader issue: how the Philippines is perceived internationally. Filipinos are very active on social media, and negative news about crime or incidents can spread quickly, reinforcing stereotypes that the country is unsafe. In April, a robbery involving Korean tourists occurred on the so-called Friendship Highway. This incident was part of a series of crimes involving foreign visitors this year. As a result, South Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a travel advisory warning its citizens to take extra precautions when visiting the Philippines. The embassy has also advised its citizens to avoid walking outside at night. Based on our latest records from January 10 to date, we documented 5 incidents involving foreign nationals here in Angel City, 3 of whom were South Korean nationals. These include cases of qualified theft, reckless impulsiveness resulting in homicide, and theft. I'm glad to report that all of these cases have been resolved and appropriate charges have already been filed. They are now undergoing trial in court. The tourism department is now expanding its Korean language program for police officers. Most of our tourists here are Koreans, so, one of our strategies is to study the Korean language to prevent language barriers. The training has been instrumental in building trust and a quick response mechanism. Koreans who previously hesitated to report crimes now approach the police freely, knowing they will be understood. Over 8,000 police officers located in popular tourist spots have been trained since the course started last year. As for Hello Safe, the company has since removed the list and published an apology. While the false categorization and unsubstantiated characterization of the Philippines may have been fabricated, its consequences were real. The impact was deeply felt across our destinations, affecting travel confidence, resulting in cancellations, and creating a very negative perception of the Philippines as a whole. That is why we are working as hard as we can to communicate to the rest of the world that the Philippines is a safe destination. This will not be the last instance of bad press for the Philippines. However, in September, a report by an investment and hedge fund manager ranked the Philippines as the country with the lowest return on investment in tourism in the region. The study found that the Duterte and Marcos Jr. administrations invested $23 billion in tourism, yet only $13 billion was generated in revenue last year. The government disagrees. In fact, data shows that for every peso invested in Philippine tourism, there is a 550 peso return. This is despite the fact that the Philippines is outspent by its neighbors anywhere from 3 to 8 times more in tourism promotions. This also speaks to the strength of Philippine tourism. Despite challenges and trials and all the headwinds we have faced, we are still here. We cannot seem to fully erase the negative image associated with past events, terrorism, the drug war, and geopolitical tensions with other countries.